Good afternoon, good people. That was me, kind of me. My name is Darryl Tonemah. That sounds. I have a Wikipedia page, and that's off my Wikipedia page. So pretty much you could say anything, and it'll go on Wikipedia. So that was true of me about 6 years ago. I was at the University of Oklahoma. I worked with health promotion programs, and then I transferred over to the Oklahoma Diabetes Center, as well as the Special Populations Unit. I was the administration director for the Oklahoma Diabetes Center. And then my house got hit by a tornado. Oh. I know. I was in it. I know. I was in it, and it was myself and my honey, my wifey, and we had two kidlets at the time. Gracie was 5 and Parks was 2 at the time, and we were in a closet in the middle of our house, and it destroyed the house and left the closet. I know! So we left Oklahoma because it didn't like us, and we went to New York, the Tuscarora res. That's where I live now, just outside Niagara Falls. You guys come on over and play bingo, buy some gas. We live there now. We now have a third kidlet. Jack is 4, and we moved there. And so I left the university, and I went home. It's kind of hoping, be able to feed my family somehow. And I started doing a lot of work on the neighboring reservations, in my res, and in the schools. And then I had the wonderful blessing and opportunity to go to the schools in Canada, on the different reserves in Canada, and work in trauma. How trauma behaves. How trauma behaves in us, in you, in me, and then in the community, and then what it looks like in the school. And I have learned things and done a lot of research in these areas, and I'm so excited to share it with you guys today. And you're probably sitting there thinking, another hour and 15 minutes of trauma talk crap. I know. But I hope to give a different perspective. Just like you guys, I am boots on the ground. I run toward that, just like you guys. So when things happen in the schools, I don't get to sit around and have, at my res they call it the EOG, that's the gossip on the res. I don't get to have that. I go there, just like you guys. And so I want us, you and me, to go there with tools, with awesome tools. You guys, you mentioned the toolbox earlier. I like that analogy. Because there are some specific tools that we're going to talk about by the time we're done today that I want you to, next time you're running toward that, I want you to be, you know how Superman runs like in slow motion, he takes his coat off and you're doing that? Okay? That's what I want you to be doing, except for I want you to dig into your toolbox and say, oh, this one's going to work. It's going to be awesome. Before I learned these things, I was stumped. Because I saw all this unwellness in my community among the people that I love. Right? You see it in your community among the people that you love. Your friends, your neighbors, your friends' kids, your kids. And I would use all my psychology, and I'd go in there with all my psychology-ness and felt like I was throwing a pebble at a wall. Have you ever talked with somebody who's in the middle of an anxiety attack? Have you ever said, well, just calm down? Do they punch you in the throat? Calm that down. Because the trauma that is creating that doesn't live in a language center. The trauma that is creating that lives in a sensation center. And we have to have the tool that matches what's going on in that moment. You with me there? Mm-hmm. All right, so if I say something for the next hour and 10 minutes that you agree with, just do this. Okay? Keep me going like a Southern Baptist preacher. Okay?
Talk about it,
If I say something that you don't agree with, just do this. All right? And then talk about me when you get in the car. All right. So I have, oh man, I do whole semesters on this stuff, and so I have just slides and slides and slides and slides, and it's harder to do an hour and 15-minute presentation than it is to do a semester, because they think, oh, I got to say that, and 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 pretty soon I'm up to 200 slides. So I cut that down to 35 slides, and we're not going to get through them. Okay, so don't be going home or writing on your evaluation. Well, he didn't get through all the slides. I'm telling you ahead of time, it ain't going to happen. But I promise to get to the meat of what we need to get to. Is that okay? And then I'll give you my email. But when we're done, and you just email me and say, where'd you find that stuff, Darryl? And I'll tell you. Is that all right? Okay, here we go. I love talking about this. I already told you this. So I get to go to the schools. Many different reses. I've had the blessing and opportunity to go to an overwhelming number of reses in the US and many in Canada and a lot of urban communities. Because, I say urban communities and colleges, because trauma in the brain is universal. There's not a native brain, okay? My brain's the same as yours. My brain doesn't have like a little fry bread center. It's got the same as yours does. And trauma affects the same centers in the brain. Sometimes the expression of culture or ethnicity is different, how we express that, but the brain itself is has universal. So, I want us to understand that. Well, I got this thing here. I don't have to float over here. I'm come all the way over here just because I can. So what is trauma? I'm glad you guys asked. Trauma is the state of overwhelm stored in the body. I'm going to say that again. Trauma is a state of overwhelm stored in the body. Okay? So, when you're having an anxiety attack, do you know somebody with anxiety attacks? Who does? Are you sitting with that person? Don't look at them. Look at me and give a slow nod. Okay. Okay. That's just a symptom of, and let's take the crazy out of that. Let's take the crazy out of that. That's just your body giving you some signals. It's just your body sending you some messages that the midbrain, the part of your brain that stores stress and trauma, picked up on something. It picked up on something and it said, I need to give you a little more energy. And energy in our body feels like what? Our heart beats faster, our breathing changes, our muscles tighten up, maybe we get a little shaky. I just described an anxiety attack, didn't I? And you can't think clearly, right? Because trauma is also not in a logic center. It's not in a language center, it's not in a logic center. It's in a sensation center. So I feel like this, and there's nothing going on for me to feel like that, right? I'm in a room full of happy, smiley faces, mostly. Happy, smiley faces. And then there's no reason for me to feel anxiety right now, right? But all of a sudden, there's no reason for it, but maybe that part of my brain that is hypervigilant, used the word earlier, hypervigilant, saying, do you remember when you were 5 and you were beaten by the person who wore a blue shirt? And somebody in the room was wearing a blue shirt, and that part of my brain says, look, check that out. Something's not safe here. This is too familiar. And it gets me ready to run away from you or to fight back because it's trying to protect me. It's awesome that it does that. Awesome that it does that, but that state of overwhelm is really uncomfortable. And it leads to a lot of different behaviors. Okay, so here's my little quote here. Trauma is more than an event. Let me say this, let me add this. Trauma is more than an event, the event is over. You with me there? Yeah. Trauma is more than the event is over. You're not in a car accident right now. Right? You're not being abused right now. The event is over. The trauma lives in me. That all right? Okay. The event is over. It is living in me. And it's living in me as this jolt of electricity. That makes me do that. It's living in me. So, and that's pretty uncomfortable, right? To have that jolt in you. So trauma is more than an event. It becomes a lifestyle of a reaction, hypervigilance, anger, and self-medication. Trauma is more than an event. It becomes a lifestyle of reaction, hypervigilance, anger, and self-medication. I really, let me just say this. I admire the person that spoke in front of me because he could stand still and I'm back there thinking, how does he do that? I thought, that is a gift. If I had a pedometer on, I'd like 10 miles up here right now. Which is an aside, which I'm never going to get through 35 slides. Okay, so trauma is more than an event. Hypervigilance, anger, and self-medication. Let's kind of store that in the back of your mind for a second, okay? So trauma, what is it? There's an event that occurs, or poverty, or incarceration, divorce, separation, mental illness in the home, alcoholism in the home, drug abuse in the home, any of the list of abuses, okay? And as a child, my little brain has got a long way to go to be done cooking. So it's trying to figure out, well, how's the world working? And all this stuff is happening while it's trying to figure out how the world's working. Guess what it does? It adjusts. It says, well, this is kind of an unsafe place. So what do I need to do to create safety? One of the pillars, to create safety. So trauma is the unfinished cycle of energy. It is stored in our nervous system. We've learned a lot from animal research on why zebras don't get ulcers. So this awesome book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. So there's a zebra in the outback, wherever zebras live, there's a zebra. Okay? Apparently it's at a steakhouse. Okay? There's a zebra in the outback, and it's walking around with all the other zebras. And then a lion spies it and says, oh, there's lunch. Okay? And so the lion jumps up and goes after that thing. Goes after it, takes a chomp on its side. Okay? The zebra has 3 options. Fight, flight, freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. So the zebra is not going to fight off the lion, is he? He's the king of the outback. He's not going to fight him off. He's not going to run away because he's already in his chompers, right? So what does the zebra do? Bleeds. So, are there any old schoolers like me that remember Wild Kingdom? That show? I haven't seen it. I just Googled it in the history books. Like now they have something planet. Nature Planet? Natural Planet? Okay. Animal Planet. There you go. Animal Planet. So the zebra, watch this on Animal Planet. The zebra will go, and it's making all these zebra noises, and the part of the brain that protects the zebra says, this is too much, I'm going to shut you down. Says, this is too much, I'm going to shut you down. So a hormone is released in the zebra's brain that collapses it. It looks like it's dead. It looks like it's dead. Heart's barely, imperceptibly pumping, which means the blood's not flowing. Just enough oxygen to keep brain activity. It's like, and the lion drags it back over here, and the zebra looks dead. Then the lion gets distracted because in the lion's brain, the lion says, dude, I am the king of the outback. I don't eat dead stuff. I fight stuff and I eat it right here in the outback. That's what I do. So its jaws do this. That part of the brain of the zebra that is always scanning, day and night, recognizes that it's free. Sparks that thing back up. He jumps up. You can watch this on Animal Planet Nature thing. It jumps up and runs back to the herd. It goes to the center of the herd. It doesn't stay on the outside of the herd. Listen to this. Here's a little tie-in. Trauma healing occurs when it's safe. What are you supposed to do when you agree with me? I'm going to say it again then. Trauma healing occurs when we're safe. So, does this stay on the outside of the pack? It goes to the middle of the pack, in its community. What? Yep. It goes to the middle pack in its community. They surround it to nurture it. What? Yep. They surround it to nurture it. You know what the zebra does now? Anybody know? Shakes. Shakes. Shake like. It's got a big old hole in its side, and it's just shaking. Shaking. About 30 seconds, 45 seconds, then it does this. Then it starts eating. You can see the food going in, and it doesn't have a side anymore. You can see the food going through it. Why doesn't that zebra start chain smoking? Why doesn't that zebra become an alcoholic? Because it did something that we as humans don't do. It got rid of that jolt of trauma. We as humans store it. I'm going to say that again. That sounded a little bit smart. It got rid of that jolt of trauma. We as humans store it. Our thinking brain gets in the way. Our thinking brain gets in the way. So that zebra, always scanning. You have a part of the brain that's always scanning too. Did you know that? Scanning all the time, day and night. You ever get hot in the middle of the night, kick the covers down? It's because that part of your brain says, well, there's something in your body sending you messages, and it says kick the covers down. You don't lay there for 45 minutes and think, well, if I kick the covers down, what shall the consequences of cover kicking be? How will this adversely affect my marriage? Blah, blah, blah. You don't think that, you just start kicking. Because that part of your brain says, this is hot. Get rid of that. Or in Detroit, it's cold. And you steal the covers from your honey. You don't care. Because you want to be warm. That's the part of the brain that says that. That part of your brain is scanning 5 million things per second. Right now, 5 million things, 5 million things, 5 million things. Right now you're aware of about 40 different things. You're aware of the sound of my voice. You're aware of the lighting. You're aware of you're hungry, thirsty, cold. Your body's giving you all sorts of messages. 40 different things. You're aware right now if your shirt's kind of tight on your belly and you think, well, should I pull it out right now? When's the last time I pulled this? Anybody watching? You're aware of that. I just made you aware of it. You're welcome. That part of your brain is aware of 5 million different things because its job is to keep you safe. Its job is to keep you safe. That's why those triggers that are part of that stored in that part of the brain, they may seem illogical in this room. Why is this happening? I don't know why this is happening. I don't know about the blue shirt thing. That was just stored in my body. I don't know about the blue shirt thing. So if you ask me, why are you freaking out? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. It doesn't live in that part of my brain. I just know that I feel overwhelmed. I just know that I feel overwhelmed. So when I'm working with a student who comes in fully pendulated, maxed out overwhelm-wise, and I say, how do you feel about this? Is that going to work? No. It may work later. But that can't be my tool of first, I want to say something smart here, thingy. That can't be my tool of first choice. I don't know what the word is. It can't be my first one because it's not going to work. And I'll dive a little bit more into a few stories like that to kind of connect it, because you see these people as well. You may be this person as well. Your children may be this person. So trauma, oopsie. Trauma is in the freeze. Trauma is in the freeze, in the lack of options. That child, and I'll pick on children, but it is stored in us and we take it into adulthood. So when I start talking about symptoms, you're going to say, oh, my husband's just like that. Or my brother's just like that. Or I know people in the community just like that. So we'll talk about children because the brain is still developing so much and they're so susceptible to trauma, and this is the field you guys work in. But I want you to recognize this in yourself. So it's in the lack of options, it's in the freeze. So the child that sees dad beating up mom. Well, you've seen that. You know that child. Is he going to run out on mom? Is he going to fight dad? Trauma's in the freeze. Sexual abuse, surgery, dental work. Trauma is in the freeze, and my lack of options. I don't know what to do because the child's brain is very different than our brain. They don't have the same kind of resources that we have as grown-ups. And so it's very relative. Something small, seemingly small as an adult, a child's riding a bike and they fall down, they're riding 2 miles an hour, and they biff their head. We think, oh, get up, get up, come on now. But that child's brain says, wait, what's going on here? Particularly children that have come up in traumatic environments. They are preloaded for trauma. So something like that could be a deal breaker for them, something that we would perceive as an adult as smaller. So, from biology to sociology. Do you like my title there? Utero to you and I. A lot of work went into that one. So I'll talk about several things at 30,000 foot, but when it comes to practical applications, I want us to kind of get into it a little bit more, okay? So this will be a 30,000 foot thing, just so we understand that trauma doesn't have to be this big obvious thing that sits in front of us, that we saw this car accident, or we know the cause of it. All sorts of burgeoning research on, am I doing that?
I don't know.
Should
I'm going to be self-medicating here.
You want to move your chair up there? All right. So there's a lot of research on methylation. Methylation, a lot of interesting research on that and how trauma can be stored genetically in the DNA coding. There's a lot of work to be done on that, but it's kind of interesting how that is coming out, which kind of, if you're interested in that, it's methylation, methylation, which would help us a lot with the argument of historical traumas or intergenerational traumas, more than just as a socio-cultural event, but as a genetic event, which is really interesting. So then they get closer to today. We know that anything that a mother experiences, the baby experiences. So if mom has a stressful pregnancy, so stress is just basically your cortisol levels spike, your adrenal gland becomes really active, you have all this adrenaline in your system, your pancreas slows down a little bit so you have more glucose in your system, and it feels like this, and that's stress, right? So if a mom is feeling that, guess what the baby's feeling? Stress. Crosses the placenta. To the point, just working in a community on a res in New York, and the baby was born with blisters on his hand from self-soothing in utero. Isn't that amazing? So what the mother experiences crosses the placenta to the point where these babies, these foster kids you see, these native kids you see, your kids, can be born into the world with PTSD. Into the world with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And how that shows up in kids. Let me back up a step. I'll stay on this step. How that shows up in kids can be delayed learning, head circumference smaller limbs, inconsolable, or detachment, that they're not connected to the world very well, they never cry. Kids are supposed to cry, right? That's what they tell you. That's what they say. That's how the kids say to you, I got something going on in my body. I don't know what it is, I'm a kid. So this is how I'm gonna tell it to you. They're supposed to cry. But if they never do that, that's constriction, that's shutdown. If they're doing it constantly, that's overwhelm, that's hyper arousal. They can't shut down. But you've heard people say, well, that's just a wild kid, or that's a good baby, it never cries. Babies are supposed to cry. Then they come out, the baby's in the world, And early life stuff is so important. Early life stuff is so, so important because that brain is newborn. So when it comes out, its brain, so it's in utero. When it comes out into the world, the brain is only 17% done cooking. Synaptogenesis is called, how the cells talk to each other. Only 17% of that is done when they come into the world. That means 83% of that is going to happen in your living room, in the living room of your clients. And guess what? If your client has a chaotic environment, if they're drinking, using, hitting, screaming, violence, if that's that environment is born into, guess what the baby's brain does? It says, I'm going to have to develop for this situation. I'm going to have to develop for this situation, which is going to be a little bit different. I'll have to get a little hypervigilant. And that's not a conscious choice by the child. I want to emphasize this. That's not a conscious choice by the child. The child isn't saying, well, let me develop this part of my brain a little more. It's not saying that. That part of the brain says, well, I need to take over. That survival center says, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. And when that gets too active, it has very specific behaviors. We're going to talk about more of this in a little bit. And then sociologically, that child grows up and has kids and believes still that the environment is a certain way or has trouble connecting. And so that child grows up in an environment that's chaotic or has trouble connecting with. So then you perpetuate things. So trauma's role in foster care. Everything I was just talking about, physical, sexual abuse, neglectful environment, lack of nurturing, stressful pregnancies, multiple placements. So stress in children. Positive stress. Normal, necessary part of healthy development. You guys are under stress right now, right? A certain amount of stress. You're sitting up. That's kind of stressful. For some of you more than others right now. You're staying awake, also very stressful. For the kids, first day with new caregiver immunization, it briefly increases the heart rate and stress hormones. Tolerable stress in children. More severe, longer lasting stress. Loss of a loved one, natural disaster, so by tornado, injury. If buffered by relationship with supportive adults, brain and body can recover. And I'm going to throw a word out here that some communities are not comfortable with. They're nurturing of that child. When I talk to Native men, I say nurturing. They say, we're Indian men. We don't nurture. That is a new reality. I say, go back 200 years and find out who you were. You're saying we don't nurture now because that is a trauma. That's trauma in our community speaking. If you go back in time to my tribes, we wouldn't think about hitting our kids. The male role was so important because we were teaching hunting, we were teaching fishing, we were teaching growing, we were teaching song, we were teaching ceremony. The kids were always around them. Always around. That's nurturing. We bring them up. So when people ask me, what are ways that I practice being a traditional Indian man? One of the ways I practice being a traditional Indian man is I raise my kids. They are the cheese in my life. I raise them buggers. And unfortunately, the boys look just like me. They look just like, and I look at Parker, he's now 8, I look at him and I just think, oh, poor thing. Because I could see him doing the exact same things I did. But then I think, I just love it. It's an honor as a Native man to raise my babies. I love it. It's my favorite thing. My favorite thing. Being here is my second favorite, so you know. Okay. That's my favorite thing, raising those buggers. Because that's what A, it's just natural, that's what's supposed to happen. Then 2, A and 2. That's one of the ways I practice being a traditional native man. Home. Okay. Toxic stress. Strong, frequent, prolonged adversity. Abuse, neglect, poverty, caregiver mental illness. If no support, if no adult support, it can disrupt the brain and organ development in the long term. It's so important to nurture, to raise. To nurture, to raise. Oopsie. Stress and trauma. So stress, anything that requires a response. Trauma, anything that overwhelms our ability to respond, especially if we perceive that our life, our connection to things that support us physically or emotionally is threatened. So it can be affected by the context of the trauma. Where did it happen? Home's supposed to be the safe place, right? Home is supposed to be the safe place. Maybe you guys have the same experience. Well, maybe not the exact same. Was anybody else raised on a res in North Dakota? Just me? Okay. So between us, since we're all friends, I haven't always been this sexy. I used to be 5'4" by 5'4". Another old school reference. Do you guys remember Captain Kangaroo? Anybody remember Captain Kangaroo? Yeah. You remember his hairdo? That was me. So it was like this and like that, right? So put that hairdo on a kid who's 5'4" by 5'4", and he just screamed and beat me up after school. Give me a wedgie after school, I'll be waiting. That was pretty much my childhood. And so that at the time, Standing Rock was the second poorest county in the country. And a lot of rough things, tough things happened there. And I remember needing to be home. After school, I could taste home. I would long to get home. I get beat up at school. After school, I get beat a couple more times. Then it's 4 o'clock, my last beating, scheduled 4:05. Get my wedgie. I go home, and it's like a different world. It was like a different world. I walk in, my mom was there. She said, "Hey, Dare, how was your day?" Same. Same as yesterday and tomorrow. And she'd come and give me a hug. She'd kiss me on top of my helmet head. And she said, "I love you, big boy." And I'd say, "I know." Imagine being a child with all that trauma and going home and getting beaten. Going home and going hungry. That child's brain sets up totally differently. We're going to talk more about this in a second. I'll keep rolling. Post-traumatic stress responses, PTSD, depression, anxiety, demoralization. That was such a big word, I had to Google it. To undermine the confidence or morale of, to dishearten, to take away the belief. Hope was another pillar, correct? Hope. To take away hope. So how does this express in children, what I just listed? All right, next slide is a bad slide. Did you know when you do a slide, you're supposed to do 6 by 6? The longest slide is supposed to be 6 rows and 6 lines. So check this one out. Yeah, man. So I'll just walk you through some of the highlights. You don't have to read the whole thing. I think this is in your jump drive too, right? Okay, so you guys have this. So why am I talking? You go home. Okay. All right. So domains of impairment in children exposed to complex traumas. Attachment. Problem with boundaries, distrust, isolation, interpersonal difficulties, difficulty attuning to other people's emotional states. Do you know adults who think, that person's just a jerk? They're just all about themselves. Their behavior. There is a a spot right behind this right eye called the orbital something. Orbital. And it has to deal with empathy. It affects my ability to connect to you and for you to connect to me, or for me to allow you to connect to me. I know that you exist because part of my trauma is I need to protect myself from you. So I know you're there. I know you and I know me. I struggle with the we, the relationship part of it. There's a real, and that part of your brain changes, and I'll talk more about this in a second. Biology, sensory motor development problems, analgesia, problems with coordination, balance and tone, body tone, somatization. Do you know kids that say, well, my back feels funny, or my tummy hurts, or my head feels, I have a headache today, or I just feel funny. I work with a kid in one of the schools, a student in one of the schools, who was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum. Which for him, there are several different conversations about the causality of autism. But for him, you could tie it directly to trauma. For him, you could tie it to trauma because the part of his brain where it's stored is on fire. And it's like this all the time. All the time. And I can't look at you because you're too much of a trigger. Everything around me is too much of a trigger, like this. And it looks like, so if you look at your DSM-5, it's an accurate diagnosis because it behaves that way. But it doesn't say what the causality of it is. And we know what happened in his birth and his early life was awful. And he became the identified patient in that family. And he's like, all the time. And I talked about it, he says, and he'll hulk out. He'll get that trigger that I don't know what it is. And he'll flip a switch. And he'll throw things around and he'll scream and he'll trash things. And I'll say, what happens before that? And he'll say, my body starts to feel weird. He doesn't say, I'm thinking about things. He said, my body starts to feel weird. And I can tell he's starting to feel weird because he starts to slide down in his chair. And he's trying to get more contact. He wants to get on the floor and get contact, tactile, on his body. And then he'll start biting. Because he said, it feels like there's things crawling under my skin because that electrical charge does this to us. And he's a kid without tools to know, and it's this sensation overwhelm, and he's chewing on his arm. So the way that his trauma shows up in him, we have to match the tool for that, right? If he's chewing on his arm, I'm not going to ask him how he feels about chewing on his arm. This kid's in a state of overwhelm. His body feels out of control right now. Affect regulation, difficulty with emotional self-regulation, difficulty labeling and expressing feelings, problems knowing and describing internal states, difficulty communicating wishes and needs. Here's a specific thing we can do. We're not born with a vocabulary of feeling and sensation. That's taught to us. We're not born with that. Okay? So when you get these certain things, trauma behaves. Here's how, and I like to talk about trauma as an entity. Here's how it behaves. It wants you to feel isolated. It wants you to feel alone. It wants you to keep your secrets. It wants you to think that nobody else can understand what's going on in your own skin. That's what it wants for you, because then it limits you. So Parks, my sonny boy, looks just like me. That guy, he's playing baseball this year. I know. Hope he's better than his daddy was. Okay. I was walking downstairs. So in our tornado, remind me that this is here. In our tornado, I had a very different experience of it than my family did. Because just like a true Oklahoman, the tornado sirens went off, and I went outside. I'm going to go look for that thing. And so it almost sucked me up. It was trying to pick me up, and I was on the ground, pawing at the ground. I got to my back porch, and you know how sidewalks has the lines in there? I was using my fingernails to get in those lines. so the tornado wouldn't suck me up, because I'm stronger than a tornado. Because my fingernails are stronger than a tornado. But I'm pawing away to get back into the house. I finally get to my back door, and it picked me up a couple times and dropped me. And I get to my back door, and I turn and open it up, and I turn and I slam the back door, and then my porch collapses. And I thought, I am strong. And then I look up and see my wifey getting in the closet with two of the kids, and she says, "Dare!" And I said, "What?" She said, "It's a tornado." I said, "I know." So they get in the closet and they hunker down. And I'm running around. I'm that zebra. I didn't freeze, right? I'm using up that jolt of energy to my central nervous system that God gave me to survive in that moment. My family is in a closet like this. Trauma's in the what? Trauma's in the freeze. What's my family doing? Freezing. So I was always curious about how it's going to show up in them. It had to show up somehow. So Parks, his is hyper-arousal. The midbrain just says, I got to stay kind of crackly for you. Hyper-arousal. First of all, when you meet Parks, he is so awesome. People meet Parks and nobody gets excited like Parks. It is true. He is so awesome. I hope you guys get to meet him and hang out with him. And babysit. So I can sleep. Last year I was walking down the stairs. So this was 4 years later. 2 years ago. I was walking downstairs in our house. And Gracie's sitting right here watching TV. She's on the floor watching TV. And Parks, you guys know what squinkies are? These are little rubber things about that big, and they look like superheroes and princessi. And he's about from me to her away with his squinkies, ready to whip him at the back of Gracie's head. He's like this. And I walk downstairs and I see him in full wind-up like this. And I want to say, Parker! Because that's the kind of parent I am. I want to say that, but if somebody's feeling, so remember pendulation. So here's excited and here's calm. Excited, calm. If somebody's over here and I yell Parker, what happens to this thing? It comes up here. So I said, Parks? And he's like this. Yeah, Dad. I said, I get down there and you're going to throw those at Gracie? And he's like, yeah. And I get down on a knee and I said, what do you think a better choice would be, Sonny? And he looked at me like, dude, the choice has been made. I've thought about this already, it's on. And I said, how about you give me those? And we'll talk about that. And he looked at me like, oh. He gave them to me and I said, do you kind of feel like this right here? Like that right there? Kids are awesome at expressing things that we as adults struggle to express. They're awesome at expressing sensation. Us adults will say, well, I have this sensation in my chest. Well, I feel like it is, blah, 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 blah. Parks will say, it feels like, ah! That's awesome. He's showing me what it feels like in his chest. And I said, you know what? I feel like that sometimes too. Sometimes I want to throw squinkies at people. Sometimes when I give talks and people start sleeping, I want to throw squinkies. And I said, there's a word for that. And he said, everybody feels that every now and then. It's called frustration. And he says his R's like W's. I said, say that. He said, frustration. And I said, yeah, right here. I said, that lives in me sometimes too, just like you. You're not the only one that feels that. Everybody feels that. Because trauma wants to feel isolated, right? And we're not born with that menu of sensation. It has to be taught to us. So part of this here, difficulty labeling and expressing feelings. That's a small thing we can do. That's a small thing we can do with our kids, with the kids you work with yourself. What is that going on in me? Dissociation, distinct alterations, a stage of consciousness. impaired memory for state-based events. Here's what's interesting about that one. The amygdala, basically the part of the brain where trauma memories are stored, basically. When there's this big traumatic event, the amygdala swells, and it doesn't give you full, it can give you limited memory of the event. Limited memory of the event. When I talk about the tornado, Carminda, my wifey, always says, I can't believe you remember everything about it. But that makes sense because I was getting rid of it, right? She was storing it. So her amygdala is different than mine related to that state. The research shows that at best it kind of looks like you've had a sheet of paper, like a black sheet of paper, and you poke holes in it. It'll give you some. This is amazing the way that God the Creator made us, was that part of the brain says, if I gave you the whole thing, it'd be too much for you. But how about I just kind of give you a speck of every now and then? That's amazing how we're protected like that. I love that. So kind to us. Behavioral control, we see a lot of this stuff. You guys see a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Poor modulation, they seem impulsive, self-destructive, aggressive, self-soothing behaviors. Cutting. Do you guys have a lot of cutting? Yeah. Okay. I work with some cutters, people who cut, and they say, just what that boy said. He says, it feels like my body feels so weird. And I've had people say, it just feels like there's something in my skin. And I'd rather feel this than whatever's going on in my skin. And you see this list. Eating disorders, substance abuse, thought processing, difficulties in attention and regulation, lack of sustained curiosity, problems with processing novel information. Now let's listen to this. So our central nervous system, we'll say that's the fulcrum here, and we swing on here. So here's our sympathetic and here's our parasympathetic. Here's our central nervous system. We kind of swing like this. So sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic gets us activated, gets us excited, gets us ready to go. Okay? I was kind of a little excited walking in here today because it was like entering a prison. I was kind of scared, weren't you guys? I almost turned around. Okay? Got a little excited. Calm down. So over here is the parasympathetic, okay? Sympathetic gets you excited. The opposite system calms you down. Your body has all sorts of opposite systems. That's why your leg moves. Because you got a hammy and a thigh. That's where your muscle moves, right? Because you got all sorts of opposite systems. So, but what happens with trauma is this comes up here and it doesn't come back. We're supposed to be in this range, kind of calm, right? Trauma keeps us up here. So when I start working with kids, one of the first questions is, how do you sleep? I ask them how they, and then I realize I have to reword that question because some will say, on my side. What I mean to say is, how do you fall asleep? And they'll say, overwhelming number of kids I work with say, I have trouble falling asleep. I have trouble staying asleep. When my feet do this on the end of the bed. Or when I can't sit still in class. Or my leg is always doing this kind of thing. You know people like that? Are sitting next to that person right now? Shh, look up here. Shh, no. We're not trying to incriminate. Lack of poor sense of separateness, body image, low self-esteem. And these are broader terms, low self-esteem, because I see those and I'm not real sure how to quantify that. But because I think I wonder if we can address the message that your body is sending you. How can we address the message your body is sending you? Look at this cool thing. My friend Ann Bullock. Look at this. First of all, note how impressive that all these things pop up like that. I don't know how to do that. Okay. So, over here, here's the roots. Here's the roots. Prenatal early life nutrition, poverty, prenatal substance abuse, child neglect, quality of early life relationships, epigenetics, all the stuff we've talked about in early life, right? The nurturing part of it. Let's climb the tree here. Drug abuse, overeating, emotional responses, and alcohol use. Those are kind of the bigger branches there. And you follow that out, here's the fruit that bears. Heart disease, obesity, diabetes, depression, traumatized parenting, violence, alcoholism, liver disease, and addictions. In the Native community, my dad, I remember my grandpa having the conversations when I was a babe, was a child, about these things here. Our communities are like this. And then I remember my dad, when he grew up, talking about it with my grandpa. And my dad has talked with this about me, with me. So it's not like those are changing, right? Yet where do we spend an overwhelming amount of money and personnel time? This right here. Let's start a program. Let's get a grant, start a program. Right? Nothing wrong with programs. Programs are good. But we are likely to have these same conversations in the next generation. Because we're addressing, if these were apples and I picked the apples, I picked them off the tree, what's going to happen next year? They'll grow right back. They'll grow right back. So part of us flipping it is, first of all, just so you know, got bad news, there will never be enough funds. There will never be enough funds because we spend our funds on picking fruit. Sorry. We spend our funds picking fruit. Not until we can flip that. Did you undo my whole thing, Bob? Look at that. Working against me. Now listen to this. You're not going to change the fruit until you fix the root. And that does more than rhyme. It kind of makes sense. You're not going to change the fruit until you fix the root. And so, and you guys, just like myself, you guys are the feet on the ground. You're the ones that are working with these people, with this group right here. That's you guys, man. That's awesome. This is you guys. So understanding in our thought processing, what can I do at this level that's going to change things here? And you may not see that fruit in your tenure. Because if we're working with kids now, you may not track them for their whole life. But part of this education right here, this training, leads to a different outcome here. Let me do this. Oopsie. So recognizing some of those symptoms that we might see. Physical, loss of appetite, sleep disturbance. Emotional, anger, shame, irritability. Spiritual, feeling alone, isolation, shame. Confusion, short attention span. Repetitive play. Aggression. You guys have seen all this stuff. You guys know all that. So the universal symptoms of trauma. The horsemen of trauma. The four horsemen of trauma. Hyperarousal, constriction, dissociation, and feelings of numbness or shutdown. So during the attachment process, the brain is saying, or should I put this a little bit later? The brain is saying, am I being touched? Am I being fed? Who is safe? I'm going to go over those four in a second, though. If the brain's requirements are being fulfilled, the baby develops healthy bonds and healthier behaviors. If they're not being fulfilled, and the baby regularly experiences angry or hostile environments, the baby's stress responders become hyperactive. It just says, this isn't safe, and I need to take care of myself. This isn't safe. I need to constrict. I need to do this. If the brain's requirements are being fulfilled, the baby develops healthy bonds and healthy behaviors. Whoopsie. I'll skip that one. We just want a healthy baby. Okay. So everyone hold your hand up like this. Everyone hold your hand up like this. This isn't a Donald Trump rally. Hold a hand up like this. And I'm so non-political, but that's outside the box joke for me. Okay. Now bring your thumb over like that way. And bring your hand over like that. Okay. Dan Siegel's work, he's an awesome researcher provider from UCLA. Okay. That's basically your brain. That's basically your brain. A little bit bigger. Okay. Except for in your honeys, it's probably a little bit smaller. Okay. And it's kind of cut down the middle, and then there's a bundle in the middle called the corpus callosum that connects the two sides, but that's kind of basically it. Okay. kind of basically it. Fits in your noodle like that. So right where these two fingers are right here. Right where the nails are. Right there is right here. Your prefrontal cortex. And that's where you do your executive functioning. It's where you make all your decisions, you weigh things out, it's logic. You use it all the time. You use it to dress how you dress today. You go in your closet and you say, I'm thinking to wear this today because it'd be comfortable sitting all day, but it still makes me look skinny. And I'm still going to wear this. So it's fashionable and functional. You used it already today. Okay, right where your pointer is right here behind there. That's that empathy part I was telling you about. Okay? So let's pop that up. Pop that open. Your thumb would be a kind of a model of your limbic system. And that's kind of where you hold your emotional responses. Anger, joy, frustration, all that's kind of centered there on your limbic system. Okay? Now pop that open. And right here by the size of a walnut. You know that ridge is in the back of your head? Kind of go in both sides, maybe an inch, and that's in there. It's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is, like I said, where we store memories of stress and trauma. You with me? And they have other functions, but as a part of our conversation, this is how we're going to roll with it. And there's also the hippocampus. And the hippocampus has several different functions, but for our purposes, one of them is a goalie. It kind of says, well, it kind of sees what information needs to be acted on, needs to be having the sensation base of fight or flight, or let's send this back to the prefrontal and then we'll think about it and use some logic toward it. That's what the hippocampus does. That's one of its things. It's a goalie. The second thing is it does a timestamp. It does a timestamp. So I started an hour ago, dish. We're an hour in, dish. And in 15 minutes we'll be done. Dish, file it away. And then later on, you think about this moment, the brain goes and finds that file and presents you with it and says, here's what all the stuff that was in this file. That's memory. Okay? So it does that for you. That's a healthy brain. Listen to this. Hey guys, ready? This part freaks me out. I'll read a lot of this research on airplanes, and I'll be sitting there on an airplane and I'll say, shut up. I'll say it out loud. That's why nobody sits next to me on airplanes. I'm a lonely man. So, trauma. Let's pick on something that physical abuse, or that baby that was born with PTSD in utero. That child seeing mom get hit, divorce, separation, not knowing dad, not knowing mom, those kind of things. That moment. This part of your brain, that logic center right here, where these two nails are, listen to this, shrinks. Less blood flow, less electrical activity, shrinks. The part of my brain where I have this empathy spot here, shrinks. Let's blow that up. The part of my brain where I have my emotional responses, where I get more angry quickly, swells. Do you know people who kind of have a quick trigger, that get angry pretty quick, who are very defensive? That's that guy right there. Swells. Open this up. The amygdala, guess what it does? Swells. So everything seems more traumatic, more stressful. My hippocampus, my goalie, it's like I put in my worst goalie. His dad donated the jerseys to the team and he's got to play sometime. So I put in my worst goalie and he lets everything through. He's like Swiss cheese, all this, sends it back to that sensation center of my brain, like that. So I freak out about more things then. Now here's one that I was so interested in. I'm still fascinated with it. The hippocampus struggles to give that third timestamp. So the event started, the event occurred, but there's no third timestamp. That's that soldier that wakes up screaming in a closet. It's your client that freaks out with anxiety because something happened. It's you. Because that stamp wasn't completed. The body didn't finish the cycle. It didn't get to escape. It didn't get to leave. And so it's stored and says, the midbrain hijacks us and says, it's still happening. It's still happening. Who in here has been in a car accident? Dang. You guys let me leave first today? All right. So if you're in a car accident, do you still who still does that? My wife does this. She'll be in the passenger seat. She's pressing that brake over there. Or she's that horse counting 10 at the fair. She's over there doing that. I say, what are you doing? She doesn't know she's doing it. What are you doing? Nothing. She doesn't even know she's doing it. Because that part of the brain has tricked her into thinking, it's still happening. You got a fake brake in front of you. Because that part of the brain says, this is really familiar. Because we, just like you guys, we drive a lot in snow. Yeah. And so her part of the brain scans and says, this is really familiar. You need to be hyper vigilant. And that's not a decision. It just occurs. It's not a decision. It just occurs. So her body's like this, and she starts pressing that imaginary brake. Better slow down, Dare. Slow down, slow down, slow down. I've been going 20 miles below the speed limit. I said, let's just walk. Because that part of her brain says, it's on. It's happening now. It's happening now. It's hijacked her. That's how trauma behaves. That's how trauma behaves. And you think, I don't know why they're freaking out. Also remember this. Trauma is not in the logic center. Trauma is not in the logic center. You want to know something else? Trauma is not in the language center. Trauma is not in the language center. So when somebody's freaking out and you try to talk to them and you say, what's wrong? And they say, I don't know. They probably don't know. I've had people come in and they'll sit down and I can see that they're activated. So pendulated, remember? Excited, sympathetic, calm, parasympathetic. I can see that they're activated and I'll say, can you talk about it? And no. And it may be more than, I don't feel like talking about it. My question was, can you talk about it? Because there's not words. That sense of overwhelm in the midbrain doesn't have words. It just has sensation. You with me there? All right. I plan on parking this here pretty soon, so I did that. All right, here we go. Trauma work has historically been treated top-down, cognition first. What we are finding is that it lives in the body, so we should approach it bottom-up. I'm going to say that again. This is for trauma. Trauma work has historically been treated top-down, cognition first. Think about how your body feels. Think about it. Think it through. Make it logical. Make it rational. Let me just say, I'm a cognitive, behaviorally trained psychologist. That's my training, is cognitive behaviorism. One of the things I had to kind of come to terms with was there's other tools. There's other tools. Remember that saying, if you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail, right? So I had to recognize, well, this tool isn't as, I began to notice that this tool isn't as effective with this as it is with other things. So I wonder if this requires something else. That's when I dove into this stuff. So let's just do foundationally. Things we can do environmentally. You guys have seen this stuff. Providing a strong supportive presence, modeling and managing their own expression of feelings, our own, coping, comfort with our own emotions and sensations, establishing routines with flexibility, accepting children's regress behaviors while encouraging and supporting return to age-appropriate activity, and helping children use familiar coping strategies. All good. All good. Excellent. Excellent. Added to this thing. Helping children share and maintaining their Ph.D. allowing children to tell their story in their words, play, or pictures to acknowledge and normalize their experience. And I want to make a qualifier for this one. In trauma work, this goes against everything I was taught. So I want to say that. We don't have to know the story. In trauma work, we don't have to know the story. What if the story occurred when I was 4 years old and I don't know details about it? What if it happened in utero? How am I going to? 3 months before I was born. I remember mom was stressed and it crossed the placenta. They're not going to have access to that, right? Plus, people are so horrified of sharing that story. So horrified of sharing that story. What if we could take care of it without having to know? Let's deal with what the body's sending us. The bottom-up approach rather than the top-down approach, which I have bought into that. I get it. I get it. Let me pause here for a second. Well, let me see how many slides I have left. Holy smokes, okay. All right, well, I had this cool activity that we can't do now. Got to change your life. Okay, let's do this then. We did that. We just said that. So we are born with survival mechanisms. The basis of trauma is physiological. Often there's no time to think when facing a threat. Our primary response is instinctive in the midbrain, not in the frontal cortex, so it's difficult to think our way to healing. If it didn't occur as a thought process, why are we trying to treat it that way? It's stored as a physiological process. Cognitive behavior is more effective with stress and cognitive self-calming methods, but it may not be the best work for trauma. So understanding the physiological, and to a lesser degree the psychological aspects of trauma, harmful events that often limit children's potential to fulfillment can be transformed into experiences that expand their ability to obtain a sense of mastery, resiliency, power, and responsibility. And that goes for adults as well. Here we go. Here's good news. The body wants to just get rid of the trauma. Right? The body wants to get rid of it. Maybe it hasn't felt safe. Maybe it's never been in that safe environment like that zebra has. But once it's in that safe environment, we just have to be good stewards of the process. So my baby girl, Gracie, is 12. She's just turned 12. They're having a birthday party at home for her today. I'm here. I'm in so much trouble. Okay? Her way of the trauma showing up in her was constriction, this tightening. Parks was hyperarousal. Hers is constriction. And you can see it even in the way she walks. She doesn't bend her knees. She walks like this. She walks like her hips hurt. Like that. And she runs that way. And I thought, maybe she's just uncoordinated. That'd be great if that's all it were. Maybe that's all it is. But part of being trauma-informed is saying, is it possible that? That's part of being trauma-informed, is taking it more than just one-dimensional. Is it possible that? Same as the work with that boy who was diagnosed with autism in the school. Well, let's give him let's treat him as any child on the spectrum. Is it possible that if you address trauma, other things would happen? Is it possible? We just can't rule it out of hand. We have to recognize that it's possible. So Gracie, I'm going to share a couple things with you, and then it's time to go. Gracie girl, a couple of years ago, she was in her room. I was downstairs, and I was in the basement, and I was working out, and I thought, well, it's about 8:30. I'm going to go upstairs and put the kids down, read, and pray, and think good things. So I get in the living room. I hear Gracie upstairs bawling. Like, kind of bawl. That's not Gracie. She's the kind of crier, okay? She's not the, but I go upstairs, and that's what she's doing. And she's standing over the sink, like, like that. She's drooling, snot's coming out. I almost grounded her for being gross. And I looked at Carminda, my wifey, and she's looking at her too, and I said, what happened? I asked Carminda, and she said, I don't know. We were in Park's room, and she was reading the little Nook thing. She likes to read before she goes to bed. She was reading that thing, and Carminda said, I told her it's time to go to bed, and she freaked out. So freak out is, the sense of overwhelm. That's what we've labeled that, okay? And so I'm in Park's room, and I just see way off in the distance, way over there. There's some lightning kind of in the sky, cloud lightning, okay? For whatever reason, Grace's midbrain saw that, picked up on it. She didn't know what it was. She couldn't say, well, I know it sounds irrational, but off in the distance, right? But her midbrain said, that looks like a tornado. So she's in the bathroom, fully charged, fully pendulated, fully activated, like that. Overwhelm, drool, snot. So I told Carminda, I said, can I borrow her for a second? And so I said, come with me, Grace. We went into Gracie's room. This is Peter Levine's work here. Sit down. She's here, I'm here. And she's like that. And my first question is, can you talk about it? Nope. So am I going to use my CBT tool? No, we're not going to have a conversation. She's just going to drool and snot, and I'm going to be talking inside of her head. So we're not going to use that one. And I said, what's your heartbeat doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm freaking out here. Ask me about my heartbeat. And I said, just focus on it. Don't try to change it. Just focus on it. And she's like, and I said, do you want to sit on my lap? I don't do this with other people. I said, do you want to sit on my lap? And she sits on my lap, right here. And I put my arms I didn't hold her tight. Daddy Bear wanted to hold her tight. But psychology boys thinking, hey, I wonder if we have an opportunity here to get rid of some of that. So I don't hold her tight. Hold her like this. And I said, why don't you focus on your breathing? And she said, let me just think of my happy place. Let me think I'm happy. And I said, no, don't think of something happy. Which just seems like a strange thing to say, right? Because if she starts thinking of something happy, she's using a different part of her brain. And sensation is the part of the brain where the trauma is living right now. So I want to focus on sensation. You with me there? Okay. If she starts thinking, she's engaging other parts of her brain, and I want to focus on the part of the brain where that trauma is like this right now. Because if the research is correct, we've got something good happening. And I said, is there anything else happening in your body? She said, it feels like there's a ball right here. And I said, what happens to it? I said, what happens next? Which is important because trauma doesn't know that something happens next, right? It just thinks this is how the world is, and it's been like this forever. It's going to be like this forever. If you have anxiety attacks, or you know somebody with anxiety attacks, you know that's true. They think their 2-minute anxiety attack has been happening all day long, and it's never going to change, right? So she's like, and I said, what happens to it next? She said, it rolls like that. She's just describing nausea. And I said, does it have a color? And she looked at me like, it's green. Like, you idiot? How do you not know it's green? And I said, just focus on that. And then, listen to me, my friends. There's my Bible right here. I promise this happened. She does this. So I'm sitting here. Can I move this for a second? Okay. I'm sitting here. She's on my lap. And she's facing this way. And she does this. She does this. Starts looking at that wall. And her mouth starts shaking. And then pretty soon her whole body's in this. Like that. And I'm sitting here holding her loosely thinking, I am breaking my baby. And then I said, just what the text says, I said, go ahead and shake. Go ahead and shake. I said, go ahead and shake that scary stuff out of you. That's all right. That's all right. I said, I'm going to be right here till you're done. I'm not going anywhere. You're my deal. And she shook for about 45 seconds. Like this. And then she does this. And looks right at me. Like this. Like that. And I'm looking at her. She's smiling at me. She said, I think I'm going to brush my teeth now. I said, what? She said, yeah, it's bedtime. I got to go brush my teeth. I said, I know what time it is. I said, hold on. Because another could be coming, right? After about a minute, we sat there just kind of staring at each other. And I said, all right, go brush your teeth. She jumps up, goes to the bathroom, brushes your teeth. Write this down. Peter Levine's textbook, Trauma Through a Child's Eyes, was a game changer for me. Peter Levine's textbook, Trauma Through a Child's Eyes. I gave Gracie the opportunity to be safe when she got activated and gave her body the chance to finish that cycle. Gave her body the chance to finish that cycle. In that text, you will find it saying, it says, that's what them Oklahoma Baptist preachers say, and it says. The patient will lock their gaze on something in front of them, a wall at the distance. They will start shaking. Most likely, the jaw will start shaking first, and the body will start shaking. It lasts 30 to 45 seconds. After which, they will take a deep breath, and if they're staring away, they will engage you. If they're staring at you, they'll break the gaze, and they'll feel better immediately afterward. In that text, it says that. And so Gracie went in the bathroom, and I ran and told Carmen. I was like, Carmen, guess what happened? I don't suck. I'm not an awful parent. Since then, Gracie, the valence of a storm has changed for Gracie. She's not scared of that stuff anymore. And we've had instances where we were at a soccer game and a big thunderstorm and lightning storm came on quickly. And I saw when they're first rumbling out over Lake Ontario, I heard it and I thought, oh man, Gracie's going to hulk out right here in front of all of her friends. And I saw her like, we got back in my truck, and I didn't bring it up. She said, Dad, did you hear that thunder? And I said, yeah. She said, she said, thunder's just noise in the sky, isn't it? And I said, yeah, that's all it is. And she hasn't anything with it since then. Get that text, Peter Levine. There's all sorts of research being done on the somatic, understanding what the body does, what messages the body send you, and how can you unplug some of that power that trauma has in our patients and ourselves. I'm going to give you a few texts right now. That Peter Levine one, okay? If you work with ADD patients, get Scattered Minds by Gabor, Gabor, Mate, Mate. Bessel van der Kolk, Bessel Vander Kolk. The body bears the burden. Just let's start there. Let's start there. Actually, let me give you start with this one. Get those, but start with this one. It's kind of it's a shorter one on Peter Levine's work. It's called Waking the Tiger. Waking the Tiger. So while you have your pens out, here's my email. My name's Darryl Tonemah, Tonemah. And my email is DP, as in Parker, Tonemah, Tonemah, DP Tonemah, @gmail.com. Read those and eye me if you have questions or thoughts or comments. Also, you're probably familiar with EMDR. If you're not familiar, eye movement desensitization reprocessing the research on that shows that it does very well with trauma as well. So Google EMDR. And finally, one that's become my favorite tool, but it may be a bridge too far with some people because the understanding of the electrical system in the body, we just have to flip that over. And it's a whole different way of being with someone. So Google EFT. It looks crazy, and you're going to say, Darryl, you're crazy. But it is my favorite tool. Across the board, working with any age, it's my favorite tool. EFT. So thank you guys for what you do. Thank you for being the boots on the ground and helping people. It's a gift and an honor, and you're chosen for that kind of work. And thank you for your kindness and being welcoming for my time that I've gotten to share with you. So I have to go home now and go to a birthday party. So let's keep taking care of each other, my friends, and I am done.